and welcome back to another episode of The Book Stop. I'm your host Jen, and I'm very excited to talk about today's episode. But before we begin, there will be spoilers as we talk about major events that unfold within the story. In addition, each episode will have a list of trigger warnings in the description. Be sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast, and show your support on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. And we're back with another episode, and today we are joined by none other than Shelby.
Hello. Hi. Glad to be here.
You just couldn't get enough. You had to come back for another episode.
Don't deny it. You love me just that much. I didn't want to stay away. You didn't want me to be away. This is a nice, mutual agreement.
And what book did you bring for us to talk about, and why'd you bring it?
I brought A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I'm so excited because this is fulfilling my, young adult dreams. I love fantasy. The fantasy genre so much, and so I had stopped reading during college, and only up until recently because of your podcast that I started reading again. And so I was kind of wanting to find something that would fulfill the adult aspect, but also too the fantasy portion. And specifically, this is the first book of the series, and Sarah J. Maas actually has written a ton of books, and I think this came out in 2015. And so I'm a little late to the game, but this has fulfilled all of my adult fantasy dreams. It's so good. So I am really excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, awesome. Court of Thorn and Roses / a lot of people call it ACOTAR, made its claim on Book Talk at this point, where everyone's kind of talking about it. This definitely has gotten more of a following recently.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I read this and I joined the Reddit, the subreddit. I joined heavily involved in Book Talk. I was dove heavily into it. This is a really well-written series, and it wasn't something I was necessarily expecting. There was plenty of plot twists, but also great character development throughout the entire series as well. And usually I nitpick at books, and I'm well, what are the aftermath effects of this action? And sometimes they just graze over it, it's really no big deal. And I was I would be traumatized, or that would be seriously super jarring, and I wouldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z. This series really dives well into the characters, I don't want to say the character's psyche, but I would almost say real, even though it's not a realistic book, but right. Realistic responses to, something that would happen. And so that's why I love it, because I have no questions. I'm oh, this is a huge character flaw, and they just graze over it, no big deal. This is Sarah J. Maas really knows what she's doing. But I mean, of course she does, because she has 3 other series too. She has the Throne of Glass and Crescent City, and we're not going to be probably getting another book from this series for a little bit, just because obviously that takes time. But I can't get enough, and I plan on trying to purchase all of her books, because I'm just, A Court of Thorns and Roses really set me off on Sarah J. Maas. She's great. She's a great author. All of her series are kind of anything similar to this series. You're not going to be disappointed at all.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I think me and you have different thoughts. I do think that this is a good book, but there are some things I didn't love about it, and we're going to get into that in a little bit later. But first, we're going to play a little game.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Okay. So you're going to summarize this book in 30 seconds. Try your best, and you can begin whenever you're ready.
So this is about a girl named Feyre who has to provide for her family after they have come onto hard times over the past 8 years. She's out hunting one day, and as a result of her actions, she has to go and essentially give her life to Prythian, a Fae-dominated country. And through this, she's learning of a curse on the land that is affecting the magic. And through her time in Prythian, she's learning how to not only come into her own, but also she's trying to learn how to relieve this curse on the land in order to be able to keep her family safe. And it's a beautiful story on love and tragedy and sacrifice.
Awesome. So I'm going to summarize this book for anybody who hasn't heard of the story yet. So when 19-year-old huntress Feyre kills a wolf in the woods, a terrifying creature arrives to demand payment. Dragged to a treacherous, magical land she knows about only from legends, Feyre discovers that her captor is not truly a beast, but one of the lethal, immortal fairies who once ruled her lands. As she adapted to her new home, her feelings for Tamlin transformed from icy hostility into a fiery passion that burns through every lie she's been told about the beautiful, dangerous world of the Fae. But something is not right in the Fae lands. An ancient, wicked shadow is growing, and Feyre must find a way to stop it, or doom Tamlin and his world forever. So this is essentially a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Long story short, I feel like you had to simplify it down. Yeah, it definitely has like fairy tale.
Fae retell. Oh my god.
Aspects in there as well. But yeah, let's just dive right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is, what is your favorite quote from this book?
Yeah, so one of my favorite quotes is actually before Feyre, she's in Prythian for a while, and she's actually sent back home. And so right before she does, her and Tamlin spend the night together. But as she's falling asleep, it says, "As consciousness left me at last, I thought I heard him speak, his mouth close to my ear. 'I love you,' he whispered, and kissed my brow, thorns and all. He was gone when I awoke, and I was certain I had dreamed it." Okay, come on. That makes my stomach clench almost, because I'm just like, that's so beautiful.
And the context of all of it, of like why he said it, kind of twists it a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole curse that's going on, which we'll explain later, but Feyre needs to say I love you to him to be able to break the curse, and like mean to say it. And he says it to her because he does feel that way for her, but also a little bit to kind of get her to say it back, I feel like.
Well, I actually feel like that in that part, he said it, he didn't want it to come off that way. I mean, who wants to feel obligated to say I love you back and really not mean it, right? But I feel that you kind of relieve that a little bit when you think nobody is paying attention. I think that's what he's doing, is he's like, genuinely, he has to say it. He wants to, he feels it. And he's saying, I love you, no matter what. It's a little hard to explain. I would want to be conscious when someone told me that they love me. But I think because of the curse, he would never want her to feel obligated. I mean, he sent her away 3 days before the curse became permanent. And he could have kept her up until that last moment. And he didn't. And so I think with that, like, he was wanting it to be genuine. And so that's why he said it when he said it, and not waiting any other time.
Yeah. So the quote that I brought was, "We need hope as much as we need bread and meat," he interrupted, his eyes clear for a rare moment. "We need hope, or else we cannot endure. So let her keep this hope, Feyre. Let her imagine a better life, a better world." Which is kind of the first time her dad actually says something that's actually important, instead of just being there and like just standing there and not saying anything. Feyre was such the powerhouse for that family of like keeping them alive, and the others had nothing really to cling on to after everything that's going on, especially after their mom dies. Just really like this quote. I think it's a good quote for Feyre to kind of be like, it's not all about just like life and death. There's also, you need hope to be able to just keep going. And the other quote that I brought was when that Fae came and had his wings ripped off. He died that night, and Feyre had stayed with him and held his hand as he died. And at this point, everyone thinks that she just hates the Fae, and that she is there because she's forced to be there, and all this kind of stuff, and, you know, she doesn't trust the Fae. But Tamlin or Lucien, one of the two, asked why she did that, why she stayed with him, why she held his hand, and she says, because I wouldn't want to die alone. Because I would want someone to hold my hand until the end, and a while after that. That's something everyone deserves, human or fairy.
Yeah,
that's when I respected her.
That was Tamlin who said that, because Lucien had gotten sick after like seeing the fairy with his wings torn off, and like vomited and ran. So yeah, that was Tamlin. And I think also too, like, that quote, like, not only did the readers typically like respect her, but also too, I think that was a huge moment in the story too for Tamlin and Feyre, because that's the moment where she is starting to empathize with the fairies more. She's starting to connect with the fairies around her. And that was the first time she actually vocalized it, though. Like, you know, whether I was with a fairy or I was a fairy and had someone around me I wouldn't want to die alone, I think that's huge, and I think that is where we start to see our characters really start gravitating towards each other more naturally.
Yeah, so I just want to take like a second and talk about the kind of the public view on this book. So I feel like it has a lot of love, but also a lot of hate. I feel like you're either on one side or the other. A lot of people absolutely adore this series. A lot of people have said that the first book is the hardest one to get through. It does get like more suspenseful and better as the series goes on. And then there's some people that just absolutely hate the series so much. Pick one or the other. So I'm the type of person that I just toe the line. I'm just like, I can't necessarily hate a book for being a book. So if I don't absolutely love it, I'm not going to absolutely hate it. Like, I'm just like, yeah, it's a book. It's it's an easier read. I got through it and stuff. But I just think it's so funny that you're either one or the other. Like, you absolutely hate it or you absolutely love it.
I'm on the far side of absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. I think the part where they come from absolutely hate it is usually because later on in the series they're talking about like, mates and stuff, and in the series they do talk about like, mates, my mate's this, mate that, I don't think growing up, us watching Twilight with Jacob being obsessed with finding his mate, essentially. I think that a lot of it was the same kind of idea. We either loved it or we hated it. Once I finished this, I actually googled the next book and saw like what the ratings were, and it actually got worse ratings than the first one, because here and the rest of the series is just obsessed with like mates. I still absolutely love the series though, but I do think that again, that idea, that's kind of like a breaking point, because then it almost doesn't leave it up to themselves, like that whole idea of predestined. Sometimes that's at least my theory, but with that, I think that's based on the series alone. I love this first book. I think that this first book really set the tone, set it up for success for the other books, really. The first one is a little bit harder to get through because it's a lot of world building and character outlining, establishing all of that. That's always a little hard to kind of get through, but I think in this one, there's so many dynamics to Feyre that I feel like the people who love it always connect with her in some shape, way, or form, which I'm not excluded from that.
Well, since you love it so much, what are some things that you like about the story? Specific things you like?
So I do really like how thorough that character building is, because, I mean, yeah, all the Fae men are hot and attractive, sure, but background story behind each of them. That's what I really like. I really love Feyre. She's probably, of course, my favorite character, but it's because I can relate. Like, there were times that I've gone hungry at night. I've slept in my car for a couple of nights. And so, like, there was a part of that about, like, doing whatever it takes to kind of survive that I really, like, felt like I related to. Or that want to just be taken care of because all you want to do is just live out your dream. And hers is painting, which we've painted together a couple times. So, like, I love painting. So I kind of relate to just wanting to sometimes just stop having to, what feels like, break my neck to make ends meet, to get things done the way they need to, and just be able to do what I want. Again, this is going to bleed a little bit more into the books, but it's not giving it any spoilers, is the world building behind it too. There's different types of fae or fairies. Each of them play a different role, and I like it. It's really cool. It satisfies my need for more than just like everyone being outrageously hot and gorgeous and witty and perfect and
Yeah, that kind of spills into some of the stuff that I liked. Like, I really like how the courts were divided and how it was kind of explained. I wish there was a little bit more, but I'm sure it comes more in detail in the next books. It was a pretty easy read for a fantasy book, because usually when you get to a fantasy book, you have to read all of this past and history and, why they're in this time period and all this kind of stuff. But I think this was laid out pretty well. I think the history wasn't really just thrown at us. I think it was laid out in a way that it was easy to digest for the reader. And I really enjoy the opening scene of her in the woods with the wolf that comes out. Just having the whole mystery of everything and not really understanding, and you pick up the pieces as you read along. I really like the opening scene with like her family and just explaining what's going on, why they are in poverty, why she's supporting her sister, and why her dad can't and stuff. Like, I liked how it's all kind of laid out at the beginning.
It establishes the dynamic right away.
Now some things I don't like. I didn't love the passing of time. I think it was a little too slow. The beginning was strong, but the whole middle section was so slow. And then there was so much at the end. I feel like it could have been spaced out a little bit better. Like, I get that she was trying to, like, show the passing of time, showing her, like, how she starts to accept the Fae and fall in love with them and all that kind of stuff. But there was just a whole lot of doing nothing. That's what kind of stirred me away from it. And, like, she tried to give her, like, hobbies and passions, like the painting. Strong scenes in it, but I just think that they weren't supportive enough to have just an empty gap between, like, the beginning and the end. And then, also, I didn't love Tamlin. I know he gets worse in the other books, but in this book, I felt no connection to him. I could see Feyre starting to fall in love with him, but that was all that there was, type deal. Like, it was just him there. Literally, because he made everyone else be invisible or, like, blocked out of her senses. So it was just her, him, and Lucian. I didn't love him. I didn't hate him. He was just like a piece of white bread standing there to me.
Not white bread.
He didn't even have, like, butter or, like, he wasn't, like, jelly or anything. He was just white bread. Like the last piece of bread in
not the butt of the
yeah,
loaf.
That's what he was to me.
Oh my god, not the butt of the loaf.
I also thought that Feyre was a little too young. I thought she was 15 when I started reading it, until she specifically said she was 19, and I was like, oh, okay, that's tiny centimeter better. But, like, Tamlin's old, and her being 19 just doesn't mix well to me, and it, like, makes me uncomfortable. I think she could easily be in her 20s. At least mid-20s. I don't know. I think she was just a little too young, and I think that helps support some of her decisions, because some of the decisions that she made were very lack of logic sometimes. She kind of went against the current of logic, and that might be because of her age and being a little naive. But, yeah, I just didn't love how young she was.
I do agree with that. First time I was like, it never said how old she was. So after listening through the series and then listening to it again, I was like, oh my god, she's 19.
Jesus, this girl's young.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I didn't love, there was really nothing holding her back from going home besides her family. Like, she didn't have really any friends besides that stable boy that she was hooking up with. She didn't have a future there. The only thing that she kept talking about was the promise to her mother. Played such a huge part in her wanting to return home. She had no reason to, like, want to get back because her family didn't really love her. At least not show in a way where it should make her want to go home.
I totally understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But in the very beginning, though, her mom made her promise on her mom's deathbed. When you have nothing, your word is all you have. And so she was kind of, like, forced into it. But, of course, like, even now, you know, people, like, really do take those deathbed promises to heart and really follow through or try to follow through on them. And so, yeah, there's really nothing else that's, like, keeping her in Prythia. Nothing really keeping her from, like, you know, also going home, but it is her family, and she is in dangerous territory, but, you know, she did keep a promise to her mom. I can see where that comes into heavy play. Yeah. Especially just because her dad wouldn't have done anything, and obviously her sisters wouldn't have either. And so if they aren't going to take care of themselves, who is? It doesn't have to be love, it's more so out of, like, duty.
Yeah. I just feel like it wasn't enough support, again, for the reader to sympathize with her and be like, oh, she's stuck here. I guess if you were comparing it to Beauty and the Beast, like Belle wanting to get home to her father because there was love there. Like, you could see how she loved her father and took the place of her father in Beast's, like, castle. So there was that sacrifice there as well. It just wasn't enough support for the reader to sympathize with Feyre and be like, oh, she's stuck in the castle where she gets everything she wants and is like a queen pretty much now, and seems like a better turn of events for her, I guess. I don't know. I personally just didn't love it. I feel like maybe give her a friend. Like, give her one friend. That would have been nice.
I think that's what Lucian's trying to, like, she's trying to develop, like, Lucian, and throughout the book is trying to develop that. Like,
yeah, there she has friends, but not home. Not back in her human land.
Oh, gotcha. I'm not gonna lie, like, I loved Tamlin in the beginning. I loved him, but then, like I said before, I've read through the series a couple times, and probably it's my view of him is a little tainted from the rest of the series, but also noticing some things too. I feel like that's just only reinforced when Feyre comes to his house, right? So when they're sitting down in like that dining room area and she's eating, because if you think about it, she had that venison stew like the night that she got taken, and then it was like 3 or 4 days. That venison stew before she got taken was the first meal that she probably had in a couple of days. And so she's eating and stuff like that, inhaling this food, and Tamlin takes the food away and is like, you gotta stop now or else you're gonna hurl your guts up. And it's like, bro, like, she's hungry. Like, let her have this, you know? Like, let her have some food. Constantly insults the way of that she had lived. Like, what, you think this existence is so much, you know, so much worse than the hellhole that you were living in, essentially, without really fully grasping the reasoning why they were living the way that they did. You know, like, he was kind of quick to insult, you know, and I get it too, because like, she killed his friend. And that was another thing too, is that they're all saying like, he was our friend, but they didn't like really seem to mourn his absence. And that's what bothered me, is I was like Lucien keeps making jabs at it, but like Tamlin doesn't. The fact that there's not even a scene, even one scene where they're just like, man, I miss Andress. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nothing like that. And so again, she killed what they're claiming to be their friend, and yet they don't really like seem to say much. Yeah, it's more like their anger is geared towards like, you killed one of our own, rather than you killed our friend. And saying like, you killed one of our own is a different feel than our friend, because I feel like
more personal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. To be fair, it felt like he was more of a foot soldier, because Tamlin sent him over the wall to pretty much die.
Well, and I think Andress even like said that he had volunteered that day or something.
Yeah, he said that he had a bunch of men that volunteered to help break this curse, and like, essentially the curse is what the main antagonist of the story, which we'll talk about in a second, but pretty much give them a step-by-step on how to break the curse. And one of it was that somebody had to kill their own, which is one of the Fae. So he sent foot soldiers out, pretty much, of just Fae men that volunteered to go out and die, essentially, so that way the curse could be broken. And so I feel like the connection just might not be there, because at the beginning they wanted him to think that they were his friends, so Feyre would feel guilty about killing him, go to the Faelands with him. But I feel like in the end he actually just wasn't that connected to him, and that he was just more of a soldier or one of the men that volunteered.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I agree, but like, don't keep saying that he was our friend. Like, you could say like, you killed one of our own, you know, and that still has a strong emotion tied to it. So there was that. And then again, Tamlin, I didn't like the fact that he hid all the fairies from her. I kind of get it too, because it might be a little bit more overwhelming for a human, but
the deception of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she deserved to have gotten the full truth of at least what the world that she was occupying.
Yeah.
Especially because they're like, keep your wits about you, you know, like your senses can fool you, all this stuff, but then they're not giving her the fighting chance to be able to like really learn how to discern between deception and her senses. So there was that.
I thought it was funny that she was like, I was trying so hard to be sneaky, and all this time the Fae were just staring at me as I was like sneaking around the castle, because she didn't see them there. They revealed that they were there, and she was like, I was trying to be sneaky.
Right. Or the fact that she looks at Alice when the glamour is lifted, and she's, who are you? And she's like, I'm Alice. Like, who do you think I am, you know?
So yeah, I just want to take a second here and shout out the wonderful Patreon subscribers. So a huge shout out to Bree P, Nick W, and Lulu. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. It means a lot to me, and at least 3 people out there are enjoying the podcast, and I enjoy doing them, and I look forward to the ones in the future, too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
But yeah, so who would you say in this book specifically is your favorite character?
Feyre. Like, hands down.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's just, again, I understand the desperation behind, like, she's making ends meet. I understand the desperation behind 3 other people.
And she's the youngest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I grew up hunting myself, actually. Like, I remember the meat that we would take home, or that from our kill for that day. stockpile, and it would be in a freezer and all this stuff. And this is, you can think of this as like the medieval fantasy, right? Like they don't have like an ice box, a freezer, or anything like that, so they got to eat what they can kill. So I do get the need behind like hunting, like almost like hunting to survive.
Yeah, so I feel like that's definitely a strong suit then, because she's relatable. I'm torn between Feyre. I think she's a strong main character, but I think sometimes she has a lot of slip of judgments, like where she doesn't listen. Where she kind of like, she's very smart. She's a very, very smart woman, and she's a very smart character. But I think Sarah did some things that made it where it was more a act of out of character to make the plot drive, I guess is the best way to say it. There was just some times where she acted a little foolish, I guess, for lack of a better word. And again, I think that also has played in the part that she is young, and she's in a very strange land, and she is kind of acting rashly because of the circumstances that she's in. There were just some things that I was like, why is she doing this? Like, this doesn't seem like her character. But again, I think she's a strong character. I'm like torn.
Is there someone else that you're torn with and you're like, this could be a second, like a good contender? Or are you just like, I'm torn whether she's actually like a favorite?
I'm torn between if I like her or not.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got you.
So I think once I read more and understand her better, I might like her more. But in this one, I'm torn on maybe the decisions that Sarah made. I'm torn more on that. But yeah, so I was between two. One is actually I like, and the other one's just an honorable mention. So the honorable mention first is Alice. I really wish there was more of her. I loved her story in that she was a side character that had an important part in the story, with the history of her nephews, and as well as, when Feyre does come back after going home and everyone's under the mountain, and Alice is the one that helps her get under the mountain. She better, either return back to the story, or she gets her own side book, and it's just about her.
I do love the fact that she's like that mom presence that Feyre doesn't have, and so I almost feel like she reminds me a little bit more of Nesta, but in like not in a mean way. She kind of keeps Feyre in line a bit, or at least keeps her honest. And so I do like her, and I agree. I do wish that there was more of that, and at least instead of just a friend, maybe a more like a mother-daughter type connection of some sort.
I could definitely see that.
I wish that there was more of that, for sure. Because again, like you said, there's all this time that she was spending there, and we don't see anything like that.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of female representation in the Feylands. Like, there wasn't a lot of female characters. So I'm glad that she had Alice, essentially like a handmaiden for her. But yeah, I wish there was more. My actual favorite character is definitely Rhys. Reese's Puff. Reese's Pieces. So I feel like he was the only one that had a brain, was the only one actually trying to do stuff and get it done. And I really enjoy his gray morale. He's not black and white. Doesn't really have a side. He's kind of does what he wants for himself. And he's the Night Court, right? Which I know a little bit about from this next book, that it dives more into that. So I'm very excited to see how he comes into play.
I do love his entrance. Like, that got me.
Yeah.
Where she's, like, kind of falling in love with Tamlin, but then Rhysand comes up to Calamai and goes, there you are. I've been looking for you. And I'm just like, and she turns around, and it's the most beautiful male that she's ever seen. And I'm like, okay, like, he's coming back in the story, and just to find out,
it's like Tamlin is the butt end of white bread, and Rhys is Texas Roadhouse bread. If you had to compare that.
With the cinnamon butter.
Yeah. I'm very excited to see his character development and the way that that relationship kind of works out. And I think that he brings a lot to the story. And I think that the way that he was kind of introduced explains a lot of stuff. I won't go too much into it without getting into like the others books, but yeah, I'm very excited and I really liked him.
He does have an ulterior motive to everything. Like, he likes people thinking or looking at him one way, right? He bet that Feyre would win against the Midgard worm, right? When we're introduced to this side of him, introduced to this dynamic really early, because we don't know what to expect from him. One moment he's coming in and healing Feyre's arm, and doesn't need to, mind you. Doesn't need to, but makes a deal with her that he has to come spend a week every month in his court, but then drugs her so that way. And that made me really uncomfortable.
That's what I was gonna say, is like, Rhysand definitely has some negative attributes. He does things that I don't agree with.
Absolutely. But that's just it, is that, like, we're introduced to this dynamic that he drugs her, but then, you know, like, there's that one night in her cell, just a slump against the wall, and it's just like, I just needed to talk to someone. I wouldn't say it's super vulnerable, but it's just a moment where he's just like, I just need to talk to someone. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really do like, that duality, that very well-written duality of Rhysand.
But yeah, so since we're talking about the ending, we'll just hop into it. To summarize what's happened in the book so far, Feyre has returned back to Prythian and realizes that all of the Spring Court is now under the mountain. And she has to get under there. Alice helps her. And that's where you meet Amarantha. And she is the main antagonist of the story. She pretty much is like, hey, if you want to break this curse, you either need to answer a riddle, or you have to go through 3 trials, succeed in them, and I will let the entire court go and I'll release them from their curse and blah 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 blah. Torn on Amarantha as well as a villain. Or antagonist, we'll just say.
Oh no, she's a villain. She's hardcore. Like, she's cruel. She literally does things just to, like, because she wants to. She does, and not in a good way either. Like, it's to cause hurt and pain. She is a villain.
I really enjoy the backstory that we get of her. I think the reasoning behind what she does makes sense, and it's explained very well. I do not think she is a good antagonist. I'm firm on that. I don't think she is a good villain for such a build-up, because we don't really get to see a ton about her until the very end. I feel like she was an antagonist for this book, but not the entire series. She just isn't strong enough for me to really fear her. I wish there was just more. I wish we would have saw other things that kind of impacted and increased that value for her. There just wasn't enough time to really understand her motives, get that fear for the reader to be like, oh yeah, she's going to be hard to stop. Because she just really wasn't. She felt very cartoonish, I guess is a way to say it. But that's just me personally, like, from, you know, Game of Thrones. Like, if you compare this to Game of Thrones, then she's going to look very small compared to it. I think if there was just more to support what she's saying and, like, what she's doing, I think it would help her end of the story.
I think that if it was something along the lines of, like, we have the backstory on Lucian's eye, like, she ripped out Lucian's eye, and that she obviously ripped off the wings of that fairy. I think that if there was something more to it, I agree that in the sense of, like, maybe if she controlled the bog, essentially controlled the evil that Lucian states, the evil that prowls their, you know, the land, right? Because there's at one point in time in the story earlier that Lucian confronts Tamlin and says, like, you don't even care anymore, like, are you just gonna go and, like, annihilate all the scum that will walk on our lands? Like, if she was the one who controlled them, I don't think it necessarily specifically states that she does. I think it's just right now, like, because she controls all the High Lords of magic from that night, the masquerade that she had, she also contains how much control that they have over their own borders, but that's not as something as scary as that she does that and controls all these ancient beings as well. I think you're right, and if there was any way even just to, like, keep the narrative almost the same but just give her a little bit more depth on her evil.
Yeah.
That makes sense too. I never really thought of that because Feyre really was only in there for a couple of months. Theory, not a long time to be able to get a grasp of how evil this woman is, and then yet there's at one point in time where Feyre says in the court that, like, her bowels turned watery, right?
Yeah, says that a lot.
Right, yeah, she does.
Yeah.
But again, though, too, we're also thinking, too, that under the mountain, she has to see the adder and all these, like, almost what you can say a Colosseum type style of fairies just staring at her. You know, and if the fact that Amarantha is able to at least hold them under her power, maybe that alone would be a little bit more terrifying. But I agree that that's all if we were in the world, and we're not in world, we're just reading about it. And so with that, like, there wasn't enough context in the story alone to signify the magnitude of the power that she had.
Yeah. It has to do with a lot of the fact that of how she died as well. it just seems so fast. I just didn't love her.
I actually did like that ending too, because you're right, it did happen fairly fast. And I do think that they could have given a lot more context, at least for Under the Mountain. But again, she did spend a lot of time in her cell. That's 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And what are you gonna do? So at the end, though, when Amarantha's torturing Feyre, figuring out at least that Tamlin has a literal stone heart, pretty diabolical, pretty evil. But I don't know how she could have come to that conclusion of that the answer to Amarantha's riddle was love while being tortured as well, because I can't even think clearly when I have a room full of people looking at me, let alone like imagining being able to think at all when being tortured. But what I did love in the ending was the fact that Tamlin didn't do anything. Okay, another reason I don't like Tamlin too. There was a scene right before the final act, right, where like she follows Tamlin in behind this curtain, and nobody's paying attention, and he uses that moment to try and get with her instead of saving her. I'm sorry, are you kidding? Like, are you serious? Are you so deprived as a male that you can't even think about getting someone who you love out of a dangerous situation? Instead, you're just like, oh, well, don't know if we're ever going to see each other again, let's bone. Like, I'm sorry, how does that make sense? What? But then, and when Amarantha's torturing her, Tamlin's just sitting there, and it's just like, please, like, stop begging Amarantha. Rhys got a whole dagger out and tried coming for Amarantha. Like, I'm sorry. What is it about, like, the morally gray character that is doing more for someone that he doesn't even know?
Well, there's reasons, but...
Well, yeah, I know that, but I'm trying to base what I'm saying right now solely off this book, right? Solely off the first book, without trying to get my opinions and my knowledge of the other books interfering with what I'm saying. But you know what I mean? Like, Rhysand's interactions with Feyre have been obviously less than pleasant.
Yeah.
And with that, she notices that Rhysand is the one who, like, dives for Amarantha. Tamlin doesn't do anything until Feyre breaks the curse. I'm sorry. I'm kidding. So just for the viewers understanding, if you hear pounding in the background, it's because I'm pounding on the table right now because I'm so aggravated. She notices Rhysand does something, and Tamlin doesn't do anything until he gets his power back. But why would you wait?
He wanted to make sure that the curse was broken.
No.
And be like,
try something because Amarantha is enamored with Tamlin. She wouldn't have killed Tamlin. I am full confident that she was
obsessed with him.
Right, exactly. If anything, she would have done to him what she did to Jurian, which is like torture him for days, right? And that's horrible to say, but what I'm saying is that she wouldn't have killed Tamlin right then and there. She's methodical in what she's doing. She would have made sure that Tamlin lived through at least seeing her kill Feyre, which is exactly what she did. She killed Feyre.
Literally.
Tamlin saw, but like, again, though, what if Amarantha was actually, instead of torturing her, just killed her right then and there? I was like, well, end of series. You know what I mean?
When they killed Feyre, I was so confused. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, I had to reread because I was like, wait, she died? Because I don't know anything about Fae. Like, this is my first book reading anything with fairies and all that. So it was like, wait, she died? You just killed off the main character in the first book? But then they were like, oh, and she turns into a fairy. I'm like, what? How is this like a vampire situation? Like, I don't understand how this works. So I was very confused.
Do you still need me to walk you through it?
No, it's fine. I'll make it up as I go.
Well, the reason that they brought her back, though, is because remember how the Soriel said that the High Lords just don't have power, they are power? Giving them a piece of that pure, raw power is what brings Feyre back.
So who would you say in this book is your favorite relationship?
I really like the Alice and Feyre dynamic, at least nurturing mom-type relationship. And I understand that, like, Feyre needs a friend there, too. But we just don't see enough of Alice to really establish, like, a friend outside of just duties. So, like, I wouldn't even say that they were friends. Like, they were just, like, Feyre appreciated Alice's company, but not necessarily friendship or wisdom. And I think that is, again, still really valuable, but I think that can also play into a missed opportunity because I would have loved to have seen that dynamic grow into something down the line.
Yeah. Rhys and Feyre, I do like their dynamic, and I want to explore it more. But in this one, I said that Lucian and Feyre were my favorite. I just found it very interesting. I see a lot of trust building in that, because Lucian hates her, and she hates Lucian. I felt the most emotion between them. First, the hatred, and then them fighting themselves on trusting them, and then eventually they start to respect each other. Especially when, like, he comes to her cell at the end and is talking to her, and, like, you really see that dynamic grow as the story continues and progress. So I don't know if Lucian's going to be in the next ones, so I'm excited to see how he kind of approaches her now that she kind of saved them.
And also there's additional, like, 3 or 4 other books, too, that you need to read, so...
Yeah, I gotta catch up on some reading.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you want to play a little game?
Always.
Alright, so I have some cards here for you, and they are just events that happen in the book.
Oh, chronological order. Okay, a memory game.
Yeah, so just take your time, and whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and share.
Okay, I think I do. And the first event is, this kills me. So the first event is how Twilight should have ended, aka killing the wolf in the forest. And mind you, I did not write this. You did.
I did. I absolutely take credit for writing
this. God. Okay. Then next is meeting mercenary that loves charity work, aka selling the wolf pelt. Next is going on a field trip, but you're unconscious the entire time, aka Tamlin brings her to the court. Seeing the ghost of her father outside her bedroom window, the night of the puka. Flightless fairies, aka the scene where the fae loses his wings. Should have just said I love you, aka sending Feyre home. And then battling the worm from SpongeBob, aka trial number 1. The next is making a deal with the devil, aka Rhys and Feyre's deal. And last but not least, immortality becomes you from Arrow Breaking Dawn Part 2, aka Feyre becomes immortal.
Yay, 100%.
Yeah. See, I read this 3 times. There's no way. If I lost this, then I would be super embarrassed. Again, super fan over here. I'm even thinking about getting the Night Court sigil tattooed on myself.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
All right.
Not battling the worm from SpongeBob.
Obviously, the worm that she fights does not look like that, but every time I read it, I always imagine the worm from SpongeBob. Yeah, so we are going to hop over to some missed opportunities. So what would you say, in your opinion, your own words, if you were writing this book, what were some things that you would change?
Even if I, didn't change the narrative too drastically, showing that, maybe even Amarantha has power over the evil fae that prowls the land, right? That when she's obviously not causing mayhem and terror, I feel like more of a demonstration of her power. Mm-hmm. Even if it's something maybe even in the court, where she doesn't have Rhysand do the dirty work and breaking that one fairy's mind, but maybe she does. Mm-hmm. She can only do so much, of course, because it's Rhysand's power. But if she has their power somehow tethered to something, maybe somehow she's able to use just a flicker of it. Mm-hmm. I would almost do more of a description of the Midgard worm, only because there's no way to... Because, the way that it's spelled in the book, I believe, is, Wrym. And if you look up that's actually, a flightless dragon, almost. Mm-hmm. And so... Yeah. That's what you're looking at, but then, at least for audio readers, there would have been absolutely no way to have known that, and therefore making it so much less drastic, because I'm just thinking, this big squishy worm, right, when it's actually a scaled dragon, flightless dragon that she's battling, and that's what makes that trial so intense and insane, is the dragon itself, rather than, just a big squishy worm, an oversized worm. So there's that. Probably the thing I would change would be her age, just because, to me, it's not creepy in a sense that, their age difference, only because Faye obviously matures so much more slowly. So, him being 500 or 700 years old, Amarantha knew him, Tamlin, as a kid, and then ended up lusting after him when he was older. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, a demonstration of, the fact that they do live almost forever, if not forever, and so obviously their maturity takes a while as well, and so maybe they are equivalent, but I always imagine Tamlin and Rhys in their mid to late 20s, look-wise, and so I just feel that she should be at least already 21, 22, and that's on the young side for me, but that's just me personally.
I guess some personal opinions I have is I just wish there was more of her family and, like, the reasoning behind bringing her back. Like, more friends, more possibilities for her. Drive that a little bit more, that need to get home, besides just having that one thing. And then just making sure that your plot is driven to not just one point in the story, but the entire thing. Like, not have just such a big middle part that doesn't have a whole lot that's important, I guess. Just get the readers through the book. You need a little bit more. But yeah, other than that, I think it's a good read, and it's an easy read for a fantasy book, so.
Absolutely. I loved it.
Yeah. What do we think is going to happen next? So I personally have only read a few chapters of the next book, but anything past that, I have no idea.
Okay, so I'm going to actually not say anything for this because I have much knowledge of that. So this is all going to be you.
So I think Reese is definitely going to come into play. I know that she has that mark on her where she has to go there, and I think they're definitely going to fall in love. And I think Tamlin's going to get jealous of that love, and he's going to do something where Reese and Tamlin are going to have to fight. I think one of them's going to die or get severely injured. Probably Tamlin. I definitely could see more of her sisters coming into play. I don't know if she would bring them to Prythian. I feel like their dad's going to die. They're going to have to bring the sisters there because where are they going to live? And I don't know, because I don't really understand fairies, so I don't know how easy it is to turn people into fairies, but I feel like she's going to be too afraid to lose her sisters, so she's going to make them into fairies and, like, make them immortal because she's afraid to lose them, but I don't know how it all works. I don't know if they have to, like, bite each other in like a vampire way, or if she has to kill her sisters, because I don't think she could do that either, so I'm not sure, but I definitely can see her sisters coming into play more. Something I hope is that we get more history on the fairy side. Like, in the battle between human and fairies, which we didn't really go into a ton, but I really hope we get more explaining of that. Because I was very fascinated in that, and, like, again, I don't know anything about fairies, so when they were like, oh, fairies can't lie, I was like, oh, cool, I didn't know that. Good, I just took it as, because I don't know. But then we realized later that it was just like a plot to get the humans to listen to them. Yeah, I'm very excited to see kind of where it kind of all unfolds and continues. But I know that Reese and Feyre are endgame. I just don't know how, if it, like, stays that way forever, them being immortal. So I'm excited. Those are my guesses.
Those are some cool guesses, though, dude.
Did I just ruin the entire series for someone? Did I just guess everything correctly?
Is everything I just said canon?
Oh my god. Also, I hope that they have more female characters, because this is a very male-dominated story, and I would like female characters that aren't mean to Feyre the entire time, or trying to kill her. I just want more of supporting characters that Feyre can cling to besides the person that she's in love with.
We stand women who support women.
Yes! But yeah, so we're kind of closing up here, and before we go, we're gonna make up a rating scale. We do a little bit different here on the Book Stop. We do our own little thing. So I would give A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas 4 soft-bellied worms that are breaking your arms out of 10. So I give it a little bit lower of a rating because, again, it's just a little too slow for me, and I think there wasn't enough drive to support the end, because the end is really good. I really like the end, and I like the beginning, but the middle was really, I was like, I don't know if I want to keep reading this book, it's just so slow. Obviously, the other books are way better than the series, so if you just keep going. Yeah, so that's what I rate it.
So I would give this actually probably a set of 8 wings out of 10. And the reason being for that is I think that in the middle, I can understand what you were saying, because again, I listened to it in audio, and so a lot of it I had to keep going back to listen to because I would zone out because I was listening to this at work. A lot of it, though, after reading the series, I think a lot of that middle part comes into play. The devil's in the details. Like the set up the narrative of the story, the tone of the story right at the beginning, and then followed through with, I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know what to expect, especially from Reese, which I really appreciated. I love good plot twists and not understanding or not knowing what's going to happen next. I was like, oh, this is going to be another predictable story, and there was not a single thing that I got right, which was new for me. That would be my rating.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're kind of closing out here. Thank you so much for coming and reading this book and talking about it with me, and I love talking about books that people are so passionate about. I think it's cool that we were on the same page for stuff, but we were also kind of polar opposite on some stuff too.
Yeah.
So it was a nice little back and forth between that. Shelby, you'll be back on probably the end of the year, we're thinking. If you guys want to see more of Shelby, make sure you interact with this episode, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Jen. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Bye!
Thank you for turning the pages with us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, show your support by leaving a review, sharing the episode, and following the podcast on Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast. Join us on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Hope you are too.